Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name is Lefebvre, and if you've ever tried to paint something, you are most likely familiar with the dreaded blank page. That feeling you get when you want to be creative and create a masterpiece, but you have no idea where to start or what to do. It's even terrifying at times. The idea of messing up and wasting perfectly good paper just weighs on you. Well, today I'm going to give you a couple tips on how to overcome that dreaded blank page with some fun, fail-proof ideas and ways to take the pressure off creating something worthy. So let's jump in and get started. Okay, so before we jump in to the actual paintings, I want to talk about this dreaded blank piece of paper. I want you to know it is just paper. That's all it is. And whether you create a masterpiece on it or not, you can always use it to create something after if it doesn't work out, which I'm going to show you. Or, it's a learning experience. Whether you create something incredible or not, every painting that you do is a learning experience and it's a step towards becoming a better artist. So you need to stop looking at this as a piece of, something you spent your money on. This is, I don't know how many cents or dollars, because I understand that supplies can get very expensive and you worry about wasting it, wasting money, wasting paper. But you have to start looking at it as a way to get better as an artist, whether it turns out or not. So just look at it as it's just paper, and we will create something after if it doesn't work out. Okay, so that's my little pep talk of that. But now to get into the fail-proof painting. I have a way to make sure that whatever you create on here, it will be beautiful, whether it turns out to be exactly what you want it to or not. And that is all about the color palette. So for our first fail-proof painting, we are going to create a sunset. Now, this can get tricky because skies can be tricky, but if you use an analogous palette, you will create a beautiful gradient of colors together. And an analogous palette, for those of you who don't know, are colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel. So you could have like pink, purple, and blue. You could have yellow, orange, and red, or yellow, orange, and pink. For a sky, I wouldn't do yellow, green, and blue because you don't typically see green skies. But the colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel are going to mix beautifully. Where it can run into an issue and create that muddy mess that you might not want to use the painting afterwards is when you start cross-coloring, kind of using complementary or contrasting colors. So a red and a green mixed together, you're going to get a brown muddy mess. If you want, a yellow sunset that kind of goes into a pink and then a purple, you might run into that issue because purple and yellow sit across from each other on the color wheel. They mix together, they create a brown. Same thing with orange and blue. So if you want to avoid all of that and just create a beautiful gradient sky, you're going to want to use an analogous palette. So for today's, I'm going to use yellow, orange, and pink. And whatever it turns out to be, it's going to be beautiful. So consider your color palette to start with. That is going to help avoid any kind of muddy mess that you might not want. And this is actually a really relaxing and fun painting to do. So that any beginner can do. Okay, so I'm using, I actually don't have the cover of this. I guess I ripped it off. This is the Academy watercolor paper. This is a small little pad, very inexpensive. This 100% cotton paper is inexpensive, or on the more inexpensive side compared to a lot of other cotton papers, and I actually really love it. So it makes me feel a little bit less bad using it to paint on whatever the outcome of the painting is. So you might want to look into that. I will link it in the description below. Okay, so let's do a sunset sky, and then we're going to create some stuff on top of it after that's going to be super easy and fun to do, create a beautiful painting. So the one thing I like to do with gradients is I like to wet up the whole background first. This helps the colors blend into each other a lot easier. You could just start with yellow at the bottom and then start moving it up into orange, but I find it's a little harder to get that seamless kind of look of a gradient when the paper isn't wet. So I'm just going to wet the paper. And this paper comes on a block, which means the sides are glued down and it helps the paper stay nice and flat. If you are using a paper in a sketchbook or a loose sheet of watercolor paper, you're going to want to get some painter's tape. This is just a little bit of painter's tape, and tape down a border. It also helps create a beautiful border, but it helps keep your paper flat. Okay, so my paper's wet. I've talked about the amount of water you want on your paper for a wet on wet kind of effect in the past. What you're looking for is a nice sheen. So this kind of shine, see that shine? It's buckling a little bit, but that's totally fine. But see that shine all over the paper? That's what you want. I don't know if you can see this. There's a tiny little puddle right here. You want to try to avoid the puddles. So if that happens, just kind of dry your paper or your paintbrush off on your paper towel and just move the water around. You want this nice even coat, and this will just help the paint blend a lot better. Okay, so now my paints are dry. I'm going to go in with some water just to wet them up. I'm going to start with my yellow, and I'm going to apply it to the bottom, and I'm going to slowly start to move it up. Okay. Then I'm going to grab my next color, which is orange, but I don't have orange. So I'm going to make orange. I'm just going to take a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red, and then I'm going to start applying it here. And I'm just going to start moving it into my yellow. Okay. Now you can use red, but you don't really typically see a red sky. So I'm going to start moving it into pink. Okay, I'm going to grab my quinacridone rose. I'm actually going to start at the top. You can go right there, but just I want it nice and pink at the top. So I'm going to go start at the top and then start to bring it down. Now, if you don't wet your paper beforehand, it could get a little streaky. Having the water on your paper already just helps to blend the colors together a lot better. And I'm just using a size 12 round brush for this. Okay, and then you're just going to start blending it in. Okay. So you have this beautiful gradient from pink to orange to yellow. You can even bring some of that pink down. Now, if you tend to get watercolor blooms, those little marks that look a lot lighter and they have those kind of harsher edges, it's okay. This is not a failure. You could have some texture in your sky. If you want a smooth gradient, you're going to want to work on not creating little watermarks like that. But if it happens, you have to realize this is just paper. It is okay if that happens. All right. You got to get your mindset around that it's okay. And you have to, maybe look at it as some sort of cloud in the sky. Don't be so hard on yourself and just go with it. So maybe I'll even try to create that. I'm going to grab some of the pink and I'm just going to move it down into the yellow. These could be like little fluffy kind of clouds or like wispy clouds. You can even grab some of that yellow, bring it up. But whatever you do, however you mix it, it's going to blend nicely together. You're not going to get a muddy mess because you're using an analogous palette. Okay. Now let me see if I add a little bit of water to show you those blooms. It's not going to ruin it. Okay. So there's a little, that happens when there's too much water in an area. And what water actually does is it repels the pigment. So if you have, see here, see how it's kind of lighter? You're getting that cauliflower kind of bloom. It repels the pigment, creates a white mark with some harsh edges. That also happens if it starts to dry in one area and is a lot more wet in the other area and they're touching, they create the separation. It's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? Go with it. Have a textured sky, okay? Nature does some beautiful things naturally. Just go with it. Now, where you could run into an issue with this is, say I wanted to, naturally I would add some blue or purple to the top to get a nice like darker kind of sky. Because that's typically what happens with sunsets. But if you have some of that yellow or orange closer to the top here, that's where you can start to get a bit of a muddy mess. So if you want to avoid that, don't put any other colors on there. This is fail-proof. You can't really mess this up. Look at all these colors blending in together. Okay. So the next part of this is you're going to let it completely dry. And then we're going to come back. We're going to do a couple of things over top of it and you'll have a beautiful sunset painting. Okay, so now that our sunset is dry, like look how beautiful this is. You could just use this, you know, as a card or anything that you wanted to. We're gonna add some buildings on top. So what I want you to do is we're gonna actually create a couple layers of buildings, just to make it give it a little bit more depth. So I have to create a black because I don't have black in this palette. But I'm going to mix my burnt sienna and some indigo. And I'm going to make it a bit more on the brown side, I think. Or just a little bit lighter in color. I might grab a little bit of orange, just to make it a bit more warm. And I'm just using a flat brush. And if you have a flat brush or you can just create a straight line, you can create buildings. So all I'm going to do is just start making some rectangles. I want a little bit more yellow and the orange into them. Just a little bit more brown. Okay. Yeah, a little bit more brown to them, because these ones are going to have a bit of that sun-kissed kind of glow to them. Like so. Okay? Like that. Super easy. All right? Then you're going to let these dry, and we're going to do one more round in front. Okay, so let's let this dry for a minute. Okay, now that it's dry, we're going to do the same thing in front, just making it a little bit darker. So I'm going to add a little bit more indigo to my mix. And we're just going to create some more buildings in front, because they would be a bit more in the shade almost. So the buildings in the background have that sun-kissed glow to them. All right, but this just helps create some depth, which is a lot of fun. Okay, and you could do more intricate looking buildings, not just rectangles, but this is just something easy that anyone can do. Okay, maybe do like a little line, like there's those like antenna on top of the building. Okay. You can even create just like a little bit of like an angle to them. Like that. But like, look how pretty already. It's a sunset in a city. And it really takes barely any effort. You can't really mess this up. All right. Like, I have faith in absolutely everybody that they can do this. I'm going to create a couple of those little like antenna on some of the ones that are in the background. So I just need it a little bit lighter. You know, you could always make, you know, some parts darker, just like give a little bit of texture to some of them. Some lines. Just like there's something going on the top of some of these buildings. Super easy though. This is like one of the easiest paintings you could do. And it really helps, you know, kind of prepare you to create skies and sunsets, just working on those gradients. Working on brush control with, you know, shapes, straight lines. And then if you want to just take it one little step further, usually a lot of yellows tend to be a bit more on the opaque side. So I'm just going to grab some, there's too much water on there. Some of my yellow, and I'm just going to create little lights in some of the buildings. I have a lot more paint on my brush than water, so it's a bit more on the opaque side. You could always use white if you wanted to as well. They're going to create it on these two as well, on these dark buildings. You have this beautiful kind of super simple skyline. I'm just doing little dots. You don't have to go crazy. It doesn't have to be everywhere. Totally up to you. If you even wanted to do like another round of darker buildings up front, you know, you could. Like it doesn't, you don't have to stop there. You can just kind of keep playing around. You're not going to mess this up. Like that. Okay. The one thing I might add, just because our sky's a little bit on the plain side, if you wanted to add clouds and stuff, you can, but you know, just keep it simple. Just grab a little bit of color, like a little bit of blue or black or whatever you have. Create some birds flying like that. But so simple to do. Literally anyone can do this. All right, so that is our first painting. If you guys are enjoying this beginner painting idea, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for tons more tutorials just like this one, or even click on this playlist right here, right there. Click there. I promise. It's great. All right, let's move on to our next painting. And this painting idea is great for practice and something that doesn't have to be a masterpiece, because we can cut it up after and use it as gift tags or bookmarks or whatever you want. And that's one of my favorite things to paint, leaves. Okay, so this is a great thing to practice when you don't know what to paint. But it's really great to practice for your brush control, practicing different strokes, and it always ends up beautiful. So again, let's go with our analogous palette. This time, because we are creating leaves, let's go with a greenish, bluish, yellow palette. All right, so you're gonna use different greens in your palette. You could add some blues, and all we're gonna do, I'm just using my size 12 round. All we're gonna do are create some leaf stroke shapes. So I'm going to start with light pressure with the tip of my brush, and it can go anywhere on the page. Light pressure, so barely pressing, and I'm going to drag it a little bit. I'm going to slowly start to press down to the belly of my brush, drag it a little bit, and lift up. And I'm just going to start creating leaves all over this page. And if you want to start by creating a stem like this, with the tip of your brush and a little bit of pressure, and then have leaves kind of coming off of it, you could do that. So light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. Now what's going to make this painting look interesting is the variety of color, but also the value. So try using more paint on your brush to get a darker value. So I just loaded up my paintbrush. See, I used the same color, but see how much darker this one is? I have more paint here than I did with this one. Then try and take some of that off and use, oops, that's a lot of water. It's okay. We're gonna go like this. We're gonna use more water so it's a lot lighter in value. All right, you can even try and grab some more paint, tap it into your wet leaf, and let it do its thing. This is one of my fail-proof painting ideas that I love to do when I don't know what to paint. Okay, I just create leaves everywhere. So, again, I'm going to grab some blue because adding blue to this is always fun. Again, analogous palette, see? I'm going to start with my light pressure for my stem. And I have quite a lot of paint on my brush. And I'm just going to go light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. I can wash some of that paint off. You know, tap it on my paper towel just so there's not too much water. I'm going to create a light value one. More water, less paint. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. And you get this really nice, beautiful light value. Okay? Add more color to it. It doesn't have to all be the same color on one branch. You can have more blue if you want. And when you're doing this light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure stroke, I want you to try and have it curve, overlap other petals if you want. Okay? So you can have light pressure, heavy pressure, curve it, have it come facing down, but see that beautiful kind of blend you get from this petal to that one, or this leaf to that one, of them just kind of blending together, and they're slightly different colors, so it's really gorgeous. Okay, I'm gonna wash off my brush a bit and just have them touch each other. Let's start this way and have it curve. Light pressure. And this is going to give you the practice you need to create these kind of strokes for leaves. And this helps you with your floral work. Honestly, this is the only stroke that you actually really need to know when it comes to painting, is releasing and applying pressure with your paintbrush. It gives you this huge range of how to paint almost anything. So this practice is going to be great for everybody. I'm going to extend this a little bit because I want some leaves to kind of overlap this one. And you'll start to notice if some of the leaves are dry, you're going to get a beautiful layering look. If some of the leaves are still wet, like this one, you're going to get a blend or a color bleed. And it's just going to be really beautiful to do. Now, is the composition of what I'm doing right now perfect? Not at all. Am I even putting any thought into it? Not at all. But when we're done, if you don't like the composition of what you're doing, we can always take it off the paper block. You can chop it up, and just the beauty of these analogous colors overlapping or blending into each other is so gorgeous that you can use, like I said, for gift tags or bookmarks or whatever. So just start. I'm going to add some yellow. Okay, we're going to get some, let's do another one here. Okay, and we're just going to apply this pressure, these colors, overlap, and go for it. Try with different shapes of brushes as well if you'd like. Okay, really experiment. Just stick to that analogous palette, and I promise, like, you can't go wrong. Okay, so I'm going to finish this up, and then we can see what it looks like at the end. And yeah. All right, and there we go. So again, fail-proof painting. You can't go wrong with this, even without like a direction of composition. Just having them all kind of overlap and bleed into each other turned out perfectly. And like I said, cut it up. You can create a bookmark or gift tags, anything. Fail-proof, you didn't waste paper, you practiced your strokes, and you created something beautiful. Okay, and then for the last painting we're gonna do, very similar concept, but this time you're gonna do petals. I love florals, I'm a floral artist, that's what I do. We're gonna create the same kind of thing, but we're gonna be doing petal strokes. And surprise, surprise, it's the exact same stroke. You're just releasing and applying pressure in different ways. So let's start our analogous palette. Again, we want to make sure that these colors are going to blend into each other beautifully. So for this one, I'm going to go for like a blue, purple, pink kind of thing. And if you're ever wondering if they're going to mix well, I like to think of using two primary colors, because those will always blend and create a secondary color, which will blend beautifully. Okay, so blue and pink, or blue and red, creates a purple. If I wanted to do, say, even though purple and blue and kind of green are on the same kind of color palette, they will blend okay, but depending on which hue of the paint that you're using, it could be a little bit messier. So I would go with primaries. So yellow, having primaries be the end kind of bookcases of our palette idea. So blue and pink, or pink and yellow, or yellow and blue. So let's do let's do pink and blue for this one. So same exact pressure stroke. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, but you're gonna go a lot shorter. You're just gonna lift up abruptly. That's gonna create some petals. Okay, you can do petals like this, going around. Again, start adding different shades of your colors. And just, you can go around in a circle if you want. And they don't have to be perfect, because we're just gonna cover this whole thing with petals. It's just gonna look like a flowery explosion. All right, so that you can do that kind of stroke. Or the way I also like to do petals is I will go light pressure, heavy pressure, and then kind of curve it like a C. So you're lifting it up, so it's kind of like an abrupt stop. You're not letting a point happen necessarily. You can, but I kind of like lift it up a little bit faster so you get more of a blunt stop. And then I'll go back to that point and then C-curve around the other way, and you get this fatter petal. Okay, and you're just going to be practicing your petals all the way around. They don't have to go all the way around like a full flower at all. You can if you want. You can always just create these little C curves, or you can just do like random petals. Some that connect, some that don't. I'm going to put some blue in here. Which blue do I want to use? I'm going to use some Prussian Blue. Okay. Maybe you tap some color into some of these. And you're just going to go for it. You're just going to fill up the whole page with these kind of petally shapes. And it's going to look a little funny, but it will look like an explosion of flowers when you're done. Okay, and I'm not even really going for it and making them perfect or doing anything special. Just have some fun with it. And like I said earlier with the leaves, try and create different values. Some of them are going to be, you know, have a lot more paint, so you get these really dark petals like this. And then some wash off your color and you'll have lighter values. And that also creates a very interesting look of depth and just contrast in your work. If you have them all super dark value, lots of paint, it's going to take away from it and you won't really know what to look. But if you have a mix of some really light values like this paired with a really dark value petal, it's going to make it look more interesting. So this is really great practice to try that out. Okay, just mix up the colors. Okay, then what I'm going to do, so see, they're all pretty spread out. They're not really bleeding into each other too much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry quickly, and then we will come right back. Okay, so now that that's all dry, we're going to do some more, and they're going to overlap, but you get more of a layered look. So again, this one, try and use a little bit lighter of a value so it doesn't completely overpower the flowers that are already there. Okay, but you don't have to go over all of them, but just have some that are overlapping, just so you get this beautiful kind of, you know, layered look to it. And it doesn't have to be perfect, like I said. You don't have to do a full flower. You can just do like a couple little petals here and there. But just, it looks like this beautiful kind of flowery mess. I mean, it's debatable whether you like this look or not. It's a bit more of an abstract kind of painting. But it just goes to show that you don't really need to paint a flower for it to look like flowers. Okay. So you can fill it as much as you want, but what's going to also help bring this together is just creating a little bit of a center to some of these flowers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another color that's like high contrast, so something really dark like indigo, and some of these where you can see where I did like 1, 2, 3 petals, I'm going to create a little center, just like dots and lines. So it looks like there's like a stamen in some of them. Okay, and that just kind of brings that element of these are flowers into it without being, you know, kind of like just a mess. So I'm doing like little lines with some dots at the end of it. Like that. A little bit more lines. Like that. Okay, and you don't have to do them for all of them, just some that you might see like a center. And it just kind of creates that look for you. And that's about it. So again, as a whole of a painting, does it look amazing? Is it perfect? No. But again, cut it up. Create something out of it. Use it as bookmarks. And my dog's going crazy downstairs. And just enjoy what you created. You practice something, you learn something from this, which is what you really need to kind of let go of the idea that everything's going to be a masterpiece, and just be happy that you're, getting some practice and becoming a better artist every time you put your paint on paper. So I really hope this was helpful to you, and maybe helps kind of get over that feeling that everything has to be perfect or you have to create something of value always, because you are with practice, and you can do amazing things just by laying your paint on paper. So that's about it. These are our 3 kind of foolproof paintings that we did today that turned out great just by using these tips of using an analogous palette, a little bit of fearlessness into creating whatever you can. Thank you all so much for watching my video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. If you want to see more content like this one, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.